Hey everyone, working on a workshop going over the EOS21 protocol, so I'm doing a quick video, just a quick walkthrough on how this is kind of shaping up. So the first thing, obviously, we're going to clone our repo. I'll put links on the video description. And really, this is a very loose walkthrough of how this process goes, but sometimes it helps to be able to visualize something rather than just read it online. I know for me, a lot of times that's exactly the process that I go through, looking up YouTube videos and such. So first, this is a fresh Ubuntu install. So what I'm doing is making sure that I have npm set up. So just kind of pulling in all the dependencies right now. And as we're waiting for this, one of the cool things of the EOS21 protocol that we've been working on is making sure that there's an easy process to be able to migrate tokens over from ERC20 to an EOS token that you might have launched. So I'm working on a project like this right now through Sense. So this is why I just wanted to be able to show everyone what that process kind of looks like in the demo version that we have here. So right now, just going ahead and go to install Node. One of the scripts that we use, or one of the oracles that's kind of listening to the ERC20 events, is one of these Node oracles. Very simple, but it's kind of pulling events from the Ethereum network, and if it finds one of these events, then it triggers an action on the EOS side. So that's what these dependencies are about right now. So we're just going to go through that. It's a drag to install npm stuff, but it's one of the dependencies here. So if you already have it, obviously you can skip these steps. So now that we have everything installed, the next thing here is going into the repo. There's pretty much everything you need. The package JSON has all the dependencies ready to go, so a quick npmi, and it's going to pull everything in. So we're just going to try to fast forward as we go through all of the usual Node dependency stuff that I'm sure we have fun with all the time. Once we've got that installed, then we're going to continue moving through the installation process. The README of the EOS21 on the Shios GitHub repo is pretty good about walking you through these things. So one of the dependencies that you're going to need is truffle. That's from the Ethereum side. From here, while I was going through this, I realized that I needed to do a sudo install to install truffle globally. So that's kind of the process we're going through right now. Truffle is a good test suite from the Ethereum side. So if you're mainly working on EOS, then this will kind of bring you over to the Ethereum side, and that's some of the tooling that's available for you. So the black hole contract that we're going into now, this is the Ethereum contract. It's pretty neat. It's a basic contract that allows you to authorize your Ethereum ERC20 tokens to be pulled from your account. And once that is pulled, it triggers an event that the oracle that we were talking about earlier will pull in. So right now we're just compiling it with the tooling. Everything's ready to go, ready for you to be launch it in a test network. One of the things that I didn't realize when I was setting this up is that, well, not that I didn't realize it, as I was setting it up, we need Ganache to launch a test network on the Ethereum side. I hadn't worked on Ethereum for quite a while. So that's some of the nice tooling that they have over on that side of blockchain development. So since I'm running this on an Ubuntu server, I wasn't able to install the Ganache, the one with the GUI. So in a few steps here, we'll go through setting it up through the CLI version instead. The cool thing about doing it through the CLI is that there's Docker images available for you to kind of get Bootstrap fairly quickly with all the testing stuff for the Ethereum development side. So this migration command, this is what's going to deploy your contract on the Ethereum network or your test network. This is again before I install Ganache, so I'm going to get a quick error here. And that, the good thing is, again, we can pull in a Docker image and just bootstrap it from there, which we'll do in a second here. Also, this is one of the first tutorial videos that I record, so I'm going to appreciate the patience with this as I hopefully get better at this and record more content for the future. So this is an easy command that we can use to be able to bootstrap Ganache CLI in Docker. If it doesn't find the image already, what it's going to do is just pull the image, the latest image, and then run it for you. So I'm just using tmux to be able to kind of switch through windows here, and this is the step that we're going to go through right now. Now that we've got everything pulled in, we can double check that it's running. And then one thing I like to do just to make sure things are running is kind of tail the logs, docker logs -f, and then the name of the container will kind of give you those logs right there. It's just an easy thing to do. That way when you're deploying contracts or doing things, you can see that it's actually doing something over in the log site. So I usually like to keep running logs of any kind of services that I'm running like that. So now we'll go ahead and try to do the migration again. And now that it finds the test network, it should be able to deploy it without too much trouble. And there we go, we deployed a contract. Now there was something that I didn't catch on the first time around, but you know, I'll go over it in a little bit. And this is now the next part is creating an account on the Jungle testnet. So I already created that. I'll skip that part. I'm changing some of the configs for the alias that I had for the Docker container to run Clios. So this had the wallet, the node URL already in the alias. I'm going to remove that so that I can pass in the normal flag. And for this tutorial, we're using the Jungle testnet. That's pretty much the same testnet that the EOS21 repo has on there, and we're going to stick to that for now. There's other testnets obviously that you can use out there, whether you use your own or you use something like Crypto. The point is just being able to get something on there. Now, one of the suggestions that we're going to need to follow from the repo is to make sure that we have enough RAM to be able to deploy this contract. We're suggested 20 EOS, so I'm going to unlock the wallet now and be able to buy some RAM on this Jungle testnet so that we can deploy this contract. Cool thing is Jungle has very easy account creation, and also they run a faucet that's fairly easy to use. So if you head over to the repo, there's links to both of those things right there. So right now I unlock the wallet in a separate window, and once the wallet is unlocked, we'll run the command again on Clios to go ahead and buy ourselves some RAM for this account, some extra RAM for this account. So that went through. We can obviously go ahead and check our account on the Jungle testnet to make sure that everything's fine, but for the most part things are running. So now the next part we're going to do is deploy our eosio.token contract with this account that I've created, the Angel Shields 21 account. Because we're running this in Docker, I found it easier to just shell into the Docker container and run the Clios command from there. That way I have access to the contracts. You can do volumes and play with all that stuff, but for this I wanted to do something quick. So I'm just going to shell into the container and then use the Clios command from inside there. And again, pretty similar, pretty basic command, calling up to the Crypto Alliance or Jungle testnet and deploying the token contract on the account that I've created, the Angel Shields 21 account. So that went through correctly. Once we have that done, then we can exit out, and now we're going to go ahead and issue some tokens. And so we'll exit out of this container and go back to our EOS21 folder, and then run our issue and create a token command. So the token name that we're going to create you have to kind of stick by the EOS standards, and Jungle or any of the main testnets are going to follow the standards that EOS has set for valid names. So I think I was playing with this right here, and I was going to try and create a funky token name that doesn't conform, and obviously I got an error, so I had to redo it again. The tutorial calls for you to just create 4 tokens. I got greedy, even though it's the Jungle testnet, so I'm going to create it with a million tokens here. I think if I got my zeros correct, it's going to be a million tokens. And this is the on the initial, I tried doing something like TOK21 or something like that. That ended up not working out because it doesn't conform to token name standards. So you'll see me get an error here. So as you see, we get an invalid symbol name. So now we're going to go back and create a much better name for this token, and it's just going to be SHE or she, based on the fact that we're working with the EOS tools here. And we should not run into trouble this time. Great, we created it, we have the supply, and the issuer is my account that I created for this process here. So the Angel EOS21. Now that we have this, we can move on to the next steps of this, which is actually testing out the Oracle. And again, the Oracle is it's a simple node app or node server that is listening to events that are emitted from the Ethereum network on this specific contract. And when an event is emitted, then we trigger an action on the EOS side. So just to test it out, we're going to run it, see if there's anything missing or if it just runs right off the bat. When we try to run this with Node, we see it starting, but then we are going to get some errors. And the errors we get, I missed it in the initial. There's some changes that we need to make. So if you see here, it's got the ERC20 symbol as kind of the template code. So we need to go into the config file, config.json, in the root of the EOS21 folder that we have now. And there's a couple things that we need to change. The chain ID is fine, crypto alliance is fine. If we were doing this on mainnet, we would obviously change it to mainnet items. Here we specify the account that is the authorized account for that token, the one that we're going to be issuing from. So that's my Angel EOS21 account. I'll paste in the private key later. Yeah, so I'm going to do it in a different screen. And then the other part that we need to see up here is that we have the black hole side of the configs, and that's where we have to specify the ERC20 token symbol. Now, one thing that I didn't do at first was change that. So technically the ERC20 tokens that I deployed earlier has a really weird name, which was what was in that config file earlier. So now that I've actually changed it to the she token name, I'm going to have to go back and redeploy that ERC20 token contract. The good thing is we're in a test environment, so it's not a big deal. We'll just redeploy that now that we have the correct config file or config settings in the file. So we're going to go back to the black hole contract folder and pretty much just run our migration command again. So we're going to see that Truffle's pretty good about just taking care of those things, and we'll be able to get this done fairly quickly. Yep, I make typos all day long, so just good thing that I get an autocorrect there, but once we fix that, then we should be able to run this Truffle migration again. Alrighty, so now we've redeployed it. We can see there we have the correct symbol name now. Now we have this ready to go. So now let's go ahead and try to run our Oracle again and see if we can get this tested fully. So now that we have the correct contract, I'm going to run the node EOS21.js file again. We'll go back to the parent folder and then we go ahead and run that file. So now that we've run this, we've got the correct changes made in the config file, and we see that we don't have the server crashing this time. So now that we've got the events here, we have this server running. Now what we want to do is actually trigger this migration, or trigger this token migration actually from the Solidity side. So the good thing about Truffle, it actually gives us access to a console that we can use to be able to run these Solidity commands from the console. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. The repo has some of the commands that we're going to need to test this out, so we won't need to be able to figure them out. We won't need to figure them out on our own. I'm right here. I'm in the wrong folder. I need to be in the black hole contracts folder where we have the Truffle files, so we can actually run the console. So just watch out for that if you're running this as well. So as I try to figure out what the error is, I'm going to actually switch back to that folder now and run the console again, and that way I can execute the commands. Once you're executing the commands, there's one thing there, which is try to find the account that Truffle used as its default to be able to, where that contract address was deployed. So on Ethereum, the contracts are deployed to their own address, and that's what we're going to do right now. So here we have the console for Truffle. There's a couple commands we can borrow from the repo, so we're just going to type those in. One of the things that we're going to do here is it's going to spit out pretty much a bunch of information at us once we run this. And we want to be able to scroll back and copy out the from address, which is going to be our contract address, so that we can use it later. So here's all the information that's spat out. I'm going to scroll back up. I think I had to take some time to go back to the repo and double check what I was actually looking for. But as we scroll back up, we're going to see that we're looking for where we have the from address. And when you see it, we'll highlight it here so you know what to look for when you're doing it on your own. And there we go. We have the class defaults, and then you have the from. And that's the address that you want to copy for yourself. This is what we're going to be using in the later commands that we're going to run to trigger this migration for this account. So we're going to copy them out here, and then I'm just going to save them in a different file. So I'll just do a split screen here, put them on a text file, just so we can copy it back. I could have skipped that touch there, but you know. And I'm very good at copy pasting apparently. Cool, so now we have our address here. And of course, because I'm doing a recording, I'm going to go ahead and paste. And obviously I'm not going to paste the right item here, as you'll see. The good thing is nothing really blew up. So this is again another command that's in the EOS21 repo. Where we're going to be calling the actual migration. So there's the initial command we're running, and then in this next command is where we actually needed the address in here. Here's the black hole address that we're approving. Again, this is the address of the contract, how many ERC20 tokens we're approving to pull or to draw. And then here's the for, and this is when I do the bad copy pasting. And obviously that was incorrect, so Let me go ahead and redo this again. I'll try a different method this time. There you go, that's much better. So this contract call approves us migrating our tokens over. So now we have an approval, and now we're going to actually execute the migration. So once we run this command, you should be able to see this cause and effect, or our Oracle actually be able to capture this event, and that way we trigger the actual migration or the issuance of these tokens on the EOS side. So we see here we were able to catch the event, and now our Oracle is listening to that, and then that caused it to trigger issuing it on the EOS side now. So let's go ahead and double check that, and hopefully we have a success. And that's pretty much the walkthrough on how we can use this EOS21 protocol to be able to migrate ERC20 tokens over to the EOS blockchain. So here we are, we're going to check our table accounts, and as we run this, we see that there we go, we've been able to issue 4 SHIELDs. So I'm hoping this was helpful. Sometimes, as I mentioned, it helps to be able to visualize what you're doing. Again, this is the first time that I'm actually recording an entire walkthrough. I wanted to do it live, but if I would have done the live version, this would have been probably about 3 times as long, because I'm still figuring out how to use the tools to record and going through all the steps. But as I hopefully improve with this, I'll make a couple additional videos. One thing that I did want to note is that the next thing that I'm going to be working on is actually how to put a UI and UX around this protocol. It should be fairly simple for our users to be able to not deal with CLIs, and we can use some tooling like MetaMask or even Scatter to be able to simplify this process. So we'll be working on that next. Hopefully you find it useful.